apparently someone told me that it was your birthday yesterday.
Oh, it's my birthday on Sunday.
Oh, it was on Sunday.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And so
don't apologize. I'm used to it. When your birthday is on December 28th, and when I was hosting over there, I actually would work sometimes on my birthday, and it was always a good hoot because people would call up and say, actually my birthday is on December 31st, so stop your whining, okay? Because obviously we get left behind. Listen, it's always good to, and it's so much fun because because the listeners reach out to me on Facebook and my friends reach out to me on Facebook, so it's kind of nice. It's in this bitter, gloomy, windswept a week of nothing between Christmas and New Year's. But all that said, it's so funny because there's so much that is coming down the pike. And it was so funny. I was listening to you talk to that nice André Pratt before we went into news, and about his, handicapping the future of the Quebec Liberal Party. And it's going to be such a strange year because there's a real possibility that two parties will cease to exist after October of next year, after the election, and cease to exist, either get wiped off the map politically, or maybe have a couple of seats left. One of them is the ruling Coalition Avenir Québec, which every survey now is saying is just doomed. It's on the fast track to oblivion. And the other is Québec Solidaire, which is began as, I guess, a good idea, and began in theory as in theory it was a great idea, but in practice it didn't work out so great. And the fact is, it's polling even lower than the CAQ, even though it's an opposition party. It says all the right things. But here's the delicious irony, Tom, is when you look at the CAQ, which is basically a one-man show, that one man being François Legault, you look at Québec Solidaire, which has gone through so many paroxysms of ideological clashes. And we see so many senior members have left, Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois, who is the co-spokesperson and perhaps the most recognizable member of the party, as well as Manon Massé, who was certainly the most likable and the most courageous. They're gone, and the problem with Québec Solidaire was everyone was in charge. Everyone had to say. Everyone, no, excuse me, I'm holding the talking stick right now, so I'm in charge. It got a little ridiculous, and to a certain extent, Québec Solidaire became a parody of itself. So when Vincent Marissal, who was considered a great get, former political journalist, hooked up with Québec Solidaire, and then he's now sitting as an independent after he got rumbled, and they discovered, hey, this guy was shopping the PQ maybe to work to run for them in the next election. The wheels are falling off. But once again, 8 years ago, we were saying, wow, this is going to be something. Finally, we've taken the handcuffs off of this 50-year sentence that Quebec voters had to serve. You had a choice: you either vote Federalist or Separatist, and there was no in between, and that was always the issue. And blah blah blah. And it was like, oh no, it's going to be different now because there's different things coming out. And of course, be careful what you wish for, Tom, because you might get it. And in this case, you might get a lot of CAQ, which is exactly what we had for the past 8 years.
Right.
So now, are we headed back to that particular dynamic? Are we headed back to that political, Groundhog Day, where it's just a matter of, no matter what you want to say about me, if you vote for the other guy, they're going to separate. We may end up having that debate yet again, Tom.
Yep.
But you got to ask yourself as well, given what's at stake, given what we've seen over the past 8 years, is that necessarily a bad thing?
And, it's interesting you bring that up because there's a story on the front page of the National Post today. And apparently in Ottawa, people in the Liberal Party are kind of wringing their hands saying, well, what do we do if the PQ gets in and they start another referendum? And they're at loose ends.
I think that... with all due respect to the National Post, I think they're kind of missing the boat on this. I've made it clear on the show on repeated occasions. All these kind of, Mark Miller. Did you hear what he said about, the decline of French in Quebec? And it wasn't that terrible. I mean, François Legault was freaking out, and all of François Legault's entourage, all of his potted plants in cabinet were back in the box. I don't think it was an accident. I mean, I have nothing but respect for Mark Miller. I think that was a message from Mark Carney, that there's a new sheriff in town, and the idea that, my predecessor, who you basically use as a political equivalent of a doormat, that's not going to happen anymore. Mm-hmm. And I got to get this show on the road. I got to get this train running again in these difficult economic times. And nobody, especially Quebecers, have the time for your drama. So just save it. Just stop right there. Uh-huh. And it's interesting to note that and we've mentioned this on the show over the course of this week. Right now, despite all the banshee like shrieking from the separatists in the Bloc Québécois, from the separatists in the Parti Québécois, and from the separatists in the Coalition Avenir Québec, Tom, Mark Carney remains the most popular politician, head and shoulders and torso above every other politician at every level in Quebec. So, you know what? I think everyone should take a deep breath. And when André Pratt says, I think the Liberals have a fighting chance, or, I think they do, but also because I think that the PQ, and more specifically Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, is revealing perhaps a blind side when it comes to saying the quiet part out loud, being a bit over the top in some of the statements. People don't have the time for this kind of operatic, you're disloyal to Quebec if you say you don't mind working with the federal government. And to be fair to Monsieur Saint-Pierre Plamondon, remember the Premier of Quebec, the so-called nationalist Premier of Quebec, François Legault, once accused Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon of being on his belly before the federal government by suggesting that the Court of Appeal of Canada might be able to sort of disagree with the Quebec government. So this kind of hyperbolic this stuff would have flown, I guess, in the 80s and the 90s. No one's got time for that anymore. Too many people have mortgages coming due. Too many people are wondering whether they'll still have a job. Too many people are wondering whether they'll still be able to hang on to their home for any of this two-bit drama to be sold. So I think we're going to see a lot more hard-nosed approach to politics, certainly on the part of whoever takes over the Liberals in Quebec. And if they don't, they do it at their own risk if they want to start playing the PQ's game again. But in the end, it is a game. It's not real. They're just cosplaying it. Creating a new country. You and I and a lot of our listeners have gone through this for 50 years, and we know that, à un moment donné, it gets a little tired there,
right,
Tom.
Right.
Now,
you mentioned the CAQ and Quebec Solidaire, but there's another party in Quebec City that's teetering on the brink, and that's the provincial Tories.
Yeah, and, listen, I've made no secret of it. I am not I'm a falsely conservative, I guess, by outlook. And I've got no problem with Éric Duhaime, but apparently a lot of people do. And I don't know whether it's he rubs people the wrong way in French, because let's face it, Francophone voters decide elections. Mm-hmm. He was among the most disliked politicians in this week's Léger survey of the popularity contest for politicians in Quebec. I think perhaps he's still carrying around baggage from a lot of the followers he had, the anti-vaxxers and so on, from the pandemic. And I think the anger that defined the party is scaring off people. But you never know. I mean, we probably end up having to go through a couple of by-elections between now and the big one, and we'll see how the Tories fare there. But honestly, I think he's and with all due respect, I think if he doesn't win something soon, we know the electoral system isn't fair, Monsieur Duhaime, but in the end, I think he's the one who's going to have to pay the price. If the party is to survive, it's going to have a new leader.
Are we going to talk to you on New Year's Eve, James?
Absolutely. New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. I never close.
Terrific. Looking forward to you. Talk to you tomorrow.
À demain.
À demain.
I'm Luke Wilson. Join me each week for Film Never Lies. Since retiring from the NFL, I've had a lot on my mind, and now I've got my own show. So if you're tired of lazy takes, if you want honest conversations, join us each week. Film Never Lies, available on all TSN platforms and the iHeartRadio app.